Göbekli Tepe itself was the end of a process, not the beginning of a process. It was something that marked, it was a marker. It was something that brought together the best of everything that they'd accumulated and created it in one place.
AI just decoded Göbekli Tepe's 12,000-year-old mystery. The discovery is shocking. There is a hill in southeastern Turkey where someone buried a secret 12,000 years ago and designed it so carefully that it would survive perfectly intact for whoever came next. For 30 years, the best scientists on Earth stared at it and couldn't read it.
That's 6,000 years earlier than Stonehenge, and yet somehow our ancestors were capable of making this. This is Göbekli Tepe.
Then an AI looked at everything at once, and what it found has made researchers go very, very quiet. The site that broke the rules. In 1995, German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt began digging into a limestone ridge near the town of Şanlıurfa, and within days he knew something was wrong with everything history had taught us. Beneath the surface sat massive stone circles, enormous T-shaped pillars, some weighing nearly 50 tons, covered in detailed animal carvings and strange repeating symbols. The site dated to approximately 9,600 BCE. That makes it over 11,000 years old, thousands of years older than the Egyptian. Pyramids, and way earlier than the point to when humans were supposedly capable of building anything like this. Here's the problem. The people who built Göbekli Tepe had no metal tools, no wheels, and no written language. Yet they quarried 50-ton blocks from solid bedrock, transported them across difficult terrain, and raised them upright with geometric precision that modern engineers would respect. For 30 years, no one could explain how they did it. And get this, the deeper question, the one nobody could crack, wasn't even the how. It was the why. Every theory about purpose fit some of the evidence, and none of it entirely. The site kept refusing to fully explain itself. That's exactly the gap the 2026 AI investigation was built to close. What the AI was asked to do. Here's what most people miss about Göbekli Tepe. The problem was never a shortage of data. It was a shortage of connection. Over 30 years, experts from dozens of fields had each mapped their own piece of the puzzle. Astronomers ran star alignment calculations. Symbol specialists cataloged hundreds of carvings. Geologists analyzed the limestone. Structural engineers measured pillar spacing. But everyone was working in their own lane. And here's the catch. No single human brain could hold all of it at once and see what ran across every layer simultaneously. That is precisely what Grok AI was designed to do. Grok is the advanced AI system developed by xAI. The research team assembled the most comprehensive Göbekli Tepe dataset ever compiled. Every 3D scan, every ground-penetrating radar survey, every star alignment calculation, every symbol cataloged with its exact position, every climate and geology study from the relevant period. 30 years of fragmented research loaded into one system. The directive was simple. Look at everything at once. Find patterns no individual field would ever catch working alone. What came back wasn't a report, it was a translation. And the thing it decoded is the question that stumped everyone longest. What those carvings actually are. The symbols were not art for decades. The symbols covering the Göbekli Tepe pillars sat in interpretive limbo. Hundreds of carvings, animals, geometric shapes, abstract patterns, documented carefully but never decoded. Were they religious, territorial, decorative? Every theory had supporters, none had proof. Grok didn't approach them as art, it approached them as data. The AI ran statistical pattern analysis across the entire symbol collection. Not just what each symbol looked like, but where it appeared, how often, which symbols appeared near which others, and whether the distribution carried the fingerprints of random decoration or structured communication. The result was unambiguous. This was not art. This was a recording system. Grok identified approximately 47 distinct symbol types distributed in patterns matching the statistical properties of written language, non-random grouping, consistent positional rules, contextual relationships between specific symbol pairs that repeated predictably across multiple enclosures. The system had grammar. and that grammar was consistent across the whole site. Here's what nobody expected. When Grok cross-referenced those symbols against star records, geological event documentation, and climate data from around 9600 BCE, the correlations were specific. Particular animal symbols matched particular constellations. Certain geometric patterns aligned with documented sun and moon cycle records. Several abstract symbols correlated statistically with geological and climate events from the same era. This wasn't mythology dressed in stone. This was a field manual, a systematic record of what happened in the sky and on the earth, encoded for survival across time spans no spoken language could ever bridge. But that raised a bigger question. If every symbol meant something specific, what did the site's most famous carving actually say? Pillar 43. The date carved in stone. Pillar 43, the vulture stone, has been the most debated carving at Göbekli Tepe for years. A vulture with spread wings, a scorpion, a headless human figure, a large, prominent carved circle. Back in 2017, researcher Martin Sweatman proposed the pillar was recording a specific comet impact around 10,950 BCE, using star positions as a timestamp carved into stone. Serious scholarship, still contested. Grok went much further. The AI compared every element of Pillar 43 against sky position databases, geological event archives, impact crater records, and climate data from the relevant period. And here's what it found. Pillar 43 doesn't contain one layer of encoded information. It contains several, all working simultaneously. The animal figures are specific constellations. Their positions match the night sky precisely as it appeared during the summer solstice of approximately 10,900 BCE. The geometric and symbols encode numerical data through a counting system built into the arrangement of carved elements. And that prominent circle, it doesn't represent the sun, it represents an extraordinary sky event. Most likely a bright comet or supernova observed and recorded at that exact moment. When Grok reconstructed the night sky for the precise date encoded in Pillar 43, it aligned with the beginning of the Younger Dryas impact event, the catastrophic period backed by physical evidence across multiple continents when comet fragments are believed to have struck Earth, triggering rapid climate collapse, widespread animal extinctions, and the near destruction of human populations across the Northern Hemisphere. Pillar 43 is not mythology, it is a date, an event record, and an eyewitness account compressed into symbol language by people who were standing there when it happened. Dr. Marcus Chen, an astrophysicist at the Institute for Computational Astronomy, spent 3 days running Grok's star calculations through his own independent verification before he would say anything. Colleagues described him as visibly shaken when he finally committed to a statement. The precision is extraordinary. Grok identified star positions, solar positions, and event timing encoded in the pillar's symbolism that align with what we already know from geological and astronomical records. The odds of this being coincidence are less than 1 in 50,000. This is deliberate astronomical record keeping by people who witnessed catastrophic events and wanted to preserve the exact timing for whoever came after them. If subscribing to a channel about discoveries like this matters to you, do it now. Because what Grok found when it turned from a single pillar to the entire site is the part that changes the whole picture. The library. 20 enclosures, one system. Once Pillar 43 was decoded, the question became impossible to ignore. If one pillar contained that much structured information, what would Grok find when it analyzed all 20 enclosures together? Their layout, their sequence, their themes, their orientations? Göbekli Tepe is not a collection of separate religious buildings. It is a library, an organized knowledge system built in stone, sorted by subject. Grok found that enclosures dominated by snake imagery cluster in specific zones and share star alignments tied to the spring and autumn equinoxes. Enclosures dominated by fox imagery face a different direction, aligned with key calendar dates. The vulture enclosure, containing Pillar 43, aligns with the solstice. Every section faces something specific. Every section means something specific. And get this, the organization isn't accidental, it's categorical. The site was built with deliberate thematic sections. Astronomy in one zone, calendar, and numerical data in another, geological and climate event records in a third, and broader cyclical pattern information woven across the entire system in a way that only reveals itself when you see everything simultaneously. Every enclosure contributes to one unified archive of knowledge about what the sky does, what the Earth does when the sky changes, and how those patterns repeat over long stretches of time. This is not what you get from people stumbling into complexity through religious enthusiasm. This is what you get from an institution, people who made a deliberate decision and executed it with organizational discipline across 15 centuries. But no one was ready for what Grok found when it tracked the construction timeline. The decline. Knowledge slipping away. The oldest enclosures are the most precise. Full stop. The earliest structures show the most accurate star alignments, the most sophisticated symbol encoding, the most deeply carved relief work, and the largest pillars. Then, as construction continued across the following 1,500 years, every measurable indicator declined. Later, enclosures show progressively less accurate alignments. Symbol systems simplify, carving depth decreases, pillars shrink. Here's the catch. That's completely backwards. In any developing civilization, we expect skill to improve and precision to sharpen. But Grok's analysis shows the opposite. The site peaked on day 1 and eroded across 15 centuries. Grok put hard numbers on it. The earliest enclosures deviate from perfect star alignments by an average of just 0.4 degrees. Mid-period enclosures show errors between 1.2 and 2 degrees. The latest are off by nearly 3 degrees. The astronomical knowledge required to build correctly was slipping away at a measurable rate, generation by generation. The builders were not inventing this. They were inheriting it, and they were losing it faster than they could preserve it. That conclusion pointed Grok toward a question buried deeper than any pillar. Where did the knowledge originate? What lies beneath? Ground-penetrating radar. Surveys had long detected anomalies beneath the visible enclosures, hints of earlier construction phases buried under the famous pillar rings. Archaeologists noted them. Without full excavation, the data sat on the margins. Grok analyzed every available underground radar reading. What it found are structural signatures consistent with earlier construction, built in different styles, but using the same symbol systems present in the levels above. The AI's reading of the depth suggests these buried structures may predate the main enclosures by centuries, possibly thousands of years. And get this, if excavation confirms it, it pushes the site's origins back toward 12,000 BCE or earlier. Göbekli Tepe, as we know it, may not be the beginning of the story. It may be the most recent chapter of a knowledge preservation project that was already ancient when the famous T-shaped pillars went up. The builders we study were not starting something. They were continuing something that had already been running for a very long time. Engineering knowledge that shouldn't exist. Here's where things get deeply strange. Grok's structural analysis revealed engineering principles that, according to our conventional timeline, should not have existed for thousands of years. The enclosures are built around radial symmetry with a central axis. Each circular structure aligned with a specific celestial event, everything else arranged symmetrically around that line. Achieving this requires formal mathematical understanding of angles, geometric ratios, and circular geometry, not intuition, not trial and error. But that's not the part that unsettled engineers reviewing the data. Here's the catch. Grok detected that certain enclosures incorporate design principles that modern seismic engineers only developed in the 20th century. Specifically, earthquake-resistant construction. Pillars are positioned with deliberate spacing that allows each one to move independently during ground shaking. The fill material surrounding each pillar is layered with graded stone sizes, creating a flexible cushion that absorbs ground shock rather than transferring it rigidly to the base. These are not features you build by accident. You build them after systematic observation of how structures fail, followed by deliberate engineering to prevent it. Göbekli Tepe sits in a seismically active region of Turkey. It has stood for over 11,000 years. That is not luck. Dr. Sarah Bradford, a structural engineer at the University of Edinburgh's Centre for Ancient Architecture, spent 2 weeks going through Grok's structural findings before she would commit to a statement. You do not accidentally create earthquake-resistant structures. You develop that capability through systematic engineering knowledge. Either these people had a much longer tradition of monumental construction than we have any record of, or they inherited engineering principles from a source we haven't identified yet. Both options rewrite the ancient world. The network, not one site but a system. And here's what makes this even bigger. Göbekli Tepe is not alone. Archaeological work over recent decades has identified at least 12 other megalithic sites across southeastern Turkey. Karahantepe, Harbet Suvan, Taş Tepeler, and others, all built in roughly the same era, all using similar construction techniques, all featuring related symbol systems. When Grok analyzed the full dataset from all 12 sites simultaneously, the pattern that emerged changed the scale of everything. And get this, these sites are not independent local projects. They share star alignments, symbol vocabularies, and construction methods at a level of consistency that points to coordinated design, not coincidence. Coordination. They form a network spanning roughly 200 kilometers, all apparently serving one unified purpose, all eventually buried. The logistical scale of maintaining that network suggests a population base and social organization comparable to what we associate with early states, not the small mobile hunter-gatherer bands our conventional timeline insists these people were. Either our timeline is wrong, or social complexity can emerge in forms that leave far less physical trace than we expected. Either conclusion is extraordinary, but even that isn't the most deliberate thing these people did. The burial, a message to the future. Around 8000 BCE, the people responsible for Göbekli Tepe buried it. And the way they did it is one of the most telling findings in the analysis. The fill material wasn't dumped, it was placed. Larger stones were positioned to shield carved surfaces from direct pressure. Empty spaces were left around specific pillars to prevent crushing. Fill layers were arranged to channel water away from carved limestone, preventing the erosion that moisture causes across thousands of years. Here's the catch. This was not abandonment. This was conservation. The 8000 BCE date aligns with the early agricultural revolution in the Fertile Crescent, the moment populations shifted from mobile lifestyles to settled farming. The social structure required to maintain Göbekli Tepe was dissolving. They knew they couldn't keep it going, but they also knew the information inside was too important to lose, so they preserved it in the most durable way available. Underground, sealed, waiting. They built a time capsule. They built it for us. The warning, cycles carved in stone. When Grok assembled everything, the recording system, the astronomical precision, the structural engineering, the measured decline, the regional network, the deliberate burial, one conclusion came into focus, and it's the one that made the scientists reviewing this data go genuinely quiet. Everything at Göbekli Tepe points to one unified purpose: preserving the knowledge of a catastrophe the builders believed would happen. Again, the symbols don't just record a single impact event. Grok detected cycle encoding, numerical relationships, and star alignments suggesting the builders understood these events as periodic, tied to recurring celestial mechanics. The 25,920-year precession cycle, the slow wobble of Earth's axis through the constellations, appears encoded in the spatial layout of the enclosures. Shorter cycles tied to solar activity appear embedded in specific pillar positioning. This site is not just a record of what happened, it's a prediction model built in stone for when it comes back. Based on the cycles Grok identified, the AI flagged a correlation. If the cycle tracking built into the monument is accurate, we may be approaching another convergence point within the next few centuries. Grok is explicit. This is a statistical correlation, not a prophecy. But the AI can demonstrate three things with measurable certainty. Sophisticated long-term cycle tracking exists within the monument structure. Warnings about recurring events are encoded deliberately across multiple enclosures, and the builders invested 15 centuries of sustained construction to make sure this information survived. Dr. Rebecca Foster, a geophysicist at the Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, sat with Grok's cycle analysis for 2 weeks before she agreed to comment. Her assessment was careful and striking at the same time. What Grok has detected are real astronomical cycles, precession, orbital variations, solar cycles. These do correlate with climate variations and potentially with impact event probabilities. The cycle tracking capability exists in the monument. That is not speculation. That is measurable fact. The message they left us. So here is where we stand in 2026. After 30 years of digging and debating, an AI has done what no individual field of study could accomplish alone. It read the site as a complete, unified whole. And the message it decoded is this: 12,000 years ago, people survived a catastrophe that reshaped their world. They understood it in precise astronomical terms. They understood it was not random. They understood it would come back. And they made a decision that represents one of the most extraordinary acts of forward thinking in all of human history. They chose stone because stone outlasts language. They chose symbols because symbols communicate without a shared spoken tongue. They chose star alignments because the sky moves the same way for everyone in every era. They engineered structures to survive earthquakes and thousands of years of pressure. And when the world changed so completely that the work could no longer be sustained, they buried it with such precision that it survived nearly intact into the 21st century. Dr. Jennifer Lawson, a computational linguist at Oxford's Faculty of Linguistics, was brought in as one of the final independent reviewers, shown only the symbol analysis deliberately, shielded from the astronomical conclusions to avoid bias. When she finally saw the full picture, she was quiet for a long moment. What Grok identified shows the characteristics of information encoding at a level we did not expect from this period. Someone wanted us to understand something, and I think we finally do. They couldn't have known what technology would eventually read their message, but they built it to be readable by anyone who cared enough to look. In 2026, Grok AI looked. What it found was not a monument to religion or a relic of primitive ambition. It was a letter, written in limestone and star positions, addressed to the future, addressed to us. The question the decoded data raises, quietly but with unmistakable urgency, is whether we are ready to take it seriously. If you want to know what comes next as this excavation continues and the underground data gets analyzed further, subscribe now. The cycles are still turning, the warning is still there, and the story isn't finished. We just finally know what it says.